Today we're going to do a quick overview on the Tidradio TD-H3. You might have seen the 32-minute video, and this is going to be a condensed version of that. The good, the bad, the odd, and we're going to leave it at that. So hey, welcome to the channel. This is Ham Radio Dude. And the Tidradio TD-H3 is a VHF UHF radio. It comes in multiple versions, such as gmrs and or ham radio. And I say and or because you can unlock this radio. This radio does advertise 5 watts out on high power and 2 watts out on low power. There are 2 power modes. And even though the radio advertises those, I did have less than optimal results. Being VHF low power, I was at 0.3 of a watt. UHF low power, I didn't register anything, and I was at about 50 milliwatts of output power. When we get into VHF high power, I was somewhere right around 3.9 watts. And the same thing occurred with UHF high power, somewhere right around 3.9 watts after testing all my equipment. How does it look on the spectrum? That's a great question. And VHF looks to be clean. UHF looks to be clean. If we were to unlock the radio and use it on 1.25 meters, it would be called the splatter box. And I do get audio reports with this radio. My audio reports are typically good. The audio receive sounds really well as well. And hey, by the way, this radio does airband mode. The cool thing about the airband mode is there's a little bit fuller of a sound on this radio than there is something like, say, the UVK5. But there were some problems here. Since you could program with chirp and you could program manually on the front panel display or through the software, 1.25 meters, if you do choose to unlock it and use it, you cannot program any offsets on there or repeater frequencies. It's kind of like a simplex only mode, which is pretty interesting. And another interesting kind of issue I ran into was with the battery. Now the battery is advertised as a 2500 milliamp hour battery or 2.5 amp hours, and I tested right around 2400 plus milliamp hours. So I would say that the battery is typically within spec. But what would happen is every time I would be charging it via USB-C or via the cradle, it would just continue to show charging and continue to show charging and continue and continue. If I would take the radio off of the cradle or off the USB and plug it back in, everything would work again. So I do suspect that I might have an issue with the battery or the BMS associated with the battery. And Tidradio will be sending me a new radio for that matter. And to piggyback off of that, that might affect some of my power output levels as well. On to the next thing. Well, I guess that is the next thing. Tidradio customer support seems to be pretty okay. I emailed them, told them my issues, and explained why I think that it is a bad battery. And if they could just send me a new one, that would be great. They said, hey, no problem. Let us just send you a whole new unit. Oh, and hey, I wasn't sent this radio. I paid for it $39.99, plus I paid $10 for express shipping. Not only is the radio really awesome in the dark, but it's also awesome in the brightness. I could turn the radio on, I could still see what's on the screen in the sunlight. And in the dark, if I turn the radio on, yeah, it's great to have that white font on a black background. It really shines out. The whole body of this radio illuminates, and not to mention the flashlight is pretty bright. It will at least light up a bathroom where I tested it. There have been reports that the keypad doesn't illuminate. The keypad illuminates. The radio comes with an SMA male antenna port, which means you would use an SMA female antenna. And the antenna that I received with this radio did have some issues. Basically what happened is there was some glue on the antenna threads, and it would basically prevent me from being able to screw it in, but you could barely see the glue. So once I removed the glue, it now screws in just fine. Everything's good. We're cool. There's a Kenwood K-style cable that you could plug in here for your external microphone as well as headset, but also a Kenwood K-style programming cable will allow you to upgrade the firmware. Currently at the time of recording, the latest firmware is from December 29, 2023. Airband receive using the same antenna seem to be the same as, if not slightly better than something like the UVK5, and the audio does appear to sound slightly wider, which is more aesthetically pleasing on my ears, and that is pretty dang subjective. Overall, the radio is $39.99, which I think is a great deal. I've been told you can get it for as low as $31.99 on LI Express, and the radio is pretty much there. It's a huge step forward from the Tidradio TD-H8, which when released had tons of bugs, tons of quality control issues. It just wasn't ready for release. This radio is a little bit better, and there are still quality control issues. There's still issues that could be fixed in the firmware, and I'm really looking forward to seeing other people's reviews on this radio and what happens to this radio going forward. Because for all the features that this packs in for essentially the cost of a Baofeng, oh boy, we're starting to look really good here. Anyway, have a great one. If you like this kind of condensed version, let me know in the comments below, and also consider liking and subscribing. Thanks, goodbye.